Thank you, Emily, for such a lovely introduction. So why don't we start with, we'll get into what Square does. I think maybe most of us kind of know a little bit, but tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. So before joining Square, I was starting up my own business,
Oh, yes.
and I've been doing that for about a year. I'm basically aimed at helping blue chips prototype quickly in the mobile application and also payments and loyalty space. And before that, I ran innovation at Visa for a few years, which was an amazing opportunity to be, I guess, the epicenter of an industry that I've been part of for a long time. I love that. And before that, sort of a number of other opportunities. But I guess I probably started doing things a bit different when I worked at Jetstar. So, very lucky to be part of the team that sort of launched Jetstar and grew from the early days. So, learned a lot there, an amazing experience taking it from a small team of people to about 4,000 before I left. So.
That's awesome. So what was it like going from some of the big bank, NAB, Visa, to starting your own company?
It's an amazing experience. It's incredibly humbling, incredibly difficult, but an awesome experience. So I often look back at anyone that started a business has gone for this. So it's not so much unique to me, but you go from working in this corporate world where you're really well paid for particularly what most people do. And the very next day you're on zero. And that feeling of opening up your laptop and then thinking everything that happens, good or bad, happens because of what I do now. And that moment you realise that is incredibly scary, but empowering as well. So I loved it. And so the change for me was important. I had a phase in my career where I loved I hate the term entrepreneur, but I was kind of always that person in businesses trying to do things differently and shake things up. And it's very hard to do. So I love the experience of just getting out there and controlling your own destiny and getting things done.
So what made you want to go back into, Square is not exactly a small company anymore, essentially going back to a bigger company?
Sure. It was a hard decision, but probably one of the easiest ones I made as well. So I had this bad habit of when I was running my business to always try to help recruiters out. When they called up and said, hey, are you interested in this job? And I'd say, no, I'm not, but I'll point in the right direction because I know how hard it is to try to find good people. And then I kind of kept getting distracted by those calls. And so I got a new theory. I just didn't want to talk to any headhunters. And then one of them said to me, you wouldn't move for any job. And I said, well, no, because I've gone through the hard work of starting my own business and we've seen the benefit of that. But if it was the ultimate job, I'd possibly think about it. And he said, well, what's the ultimate job? And I described it, incredible products, game-changing, autonomy, the ability to start from scratch. A leader who is, inspirational, amazing products, doing things for the right reason. And he kind of laughed and said, you probably should keep listening. And I did, luckily. So.
Oh, fantastic. Well, that's really good to hear. So what are your thoughts on where the fintech industry is at right now, based on your experience going from kind of the big banks to a smaller company and back?
Sure. In Australia, I assume we're talking about? We're very early stages.
Yeah.
It's really exciting stage because there's a lot of sort of enthusiasm, sort of raw energy to getting things done and what could possibly do to the industry. But one of the absolute privileges at working at Square is, in San Francisco, anyone that's been there or worked for a company in San Francisco, it's an epicenter of talent. And the people that work at Square in the US are absolutely incredible. So, I think in Australia, we're still kind of a little bit stuck at those early stages where all the talent, and we've got an amazing education system, but all the talent coming through is still getting sucked into blue chips and sucked into the traditional roles for whatever reason. But I don't think we do enough to educate, graduates that there is another viable path. So from my perspective, FinTech is kind of stuck a bit that way where it's a complicated, difficult, but exciting industry. But you need the best people. You need absolute talent. And so I think there's no shortage of people with great ideas, but to really back those ideas and deliver them against some formidable competitors and incumbents, you need incredible teams. So it was a bit stuck there, but there's some exciting things being talked about and being said. I personally hope that there's less of the incumbents acquiring or investing in the fintech companies. That kind of always makes me feel a bit uncomfortable.
Why does it make you feel uncomfortable?
It's a bit dramatic to sort of say. It's like, but you kind of see it at workspaces and what have you, where the sort of incumbents are walking through, looking at these amazing aspirational businesses, and you really want, I know it's very difficult to launch a business and to grow and to scale, but you kind of hope they can do it autonomously and sort of get out there and keep challenging, because once you start collaborating with incumbents, that can benefit both sides, but can also sort of change your path that you're going on as a business. So, yeah.
So why do you think it's so important to have those like alternative and new and different payment solutions, or even just innovation in the industry?
I've been in payments for a while, so I'm a little bit sort of focused on it and drank the Kool-Aid and what have you. But yeah, I think payments is just absolutely a convergence of so much in our society and our economy, in terms of consumers, people on both sides of it, big businesses, and I think it's just an incredible opportunity for things to be done differently. Every industry needs competition and it needs innovation, and without that, it's just, it obviously gets stuck a bit. So we've seen no shortage of innovation in FinTech. I think Australian incumbent businesses do a good job of that. But the real game-changing ones come from people that aren't shackled, or businesses aren't shackled with legacy systems or legacy attitudes or risk profiles, and that only comes from startups. So yeah, allowing those to grow is an exciting thing for the industry.
Awesome. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what Square does, how you've entered Australia, and why you think what you're doing is so important.
Sure. So we were founded 7 years ago by Jack Dorsey and Jim McKelvey, and it was founded on the basis who Jim used to be Jack's boss at some point, and he was also an artisan glassblower, and very expensive products that he built, and he lost a sale because he couldn't take a card payment. So he rang up his friend, who happened to be Jack Dorsey, as you do, and said, these crazy sort of supercomputers we've got every day carrying around with us, why couldn't I do a transaction with that in a safe, secure transaction? And they got thinking about it, and they built prototypes and got going. So it was basically built out of that need, and they quickly realised that everyone thinks that the industry, there's card acceptance everywhere, but we often get sucked into thinking that's like the local cafe or it's a retail business or something like that. But Australia, like the US, is built of thousands, hundreds and millions of small businesses. So it started there. So just bound to accept card payments via the Square Reader, which was the original one, and then grew out from that. So that intersection of transactions is an incredibly interesting one. And from there, once that data comes through, you can build out lots of services. So in the US, we have Capital, which is providing capital services to small business to help them grow. We have Cash, which is more of a P2P or instant disbursement product. We have inventory management, payroll management, Caviar, which is food delivery, point of sale, and it keeps growing out from that. So we have lots of products. In Australia, though, we've just
have
launched.
the Square, right?
Yeah, we've just started. So we launched payments about 6 months ago now. And we started out with just a small reader, so it plugs into your iPhone, your mobile or your tablet, and turns it into a card acceptance terminal. But the little known thing, until you use it, it's got a massively powerful ecosystem on the back end of that. And all of that comes free with the product. So a small business just getting started might be attracted to Square to accept card payments. Very accessible, and we don't judge businesses on what they do or whether they're new. We think that's an asset to small businesses. So yeah, we have a great onboarding experience, but within like 5 minutes you can get your Square Reader and you can set up and start taking payments, and then you've got a massive analytics suite on the back end. So.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So who do you think isn't being served, enough or properly by some of the payment solutions out there?
Our heartland is the really small micro mobile business. It's funny when I first sat down to sort of build the strategy for Australia, and you kind of think about it and you go, oh, maybe it's tradespeople or something like that, or food trucks. But the more you think about it, just sort of steamrolls of all these businesses, whether it's health and beauty, service, mobility, fleets, markets, farmers, all these people that
events?
Absolutely events. Events is a huge one, actually. Yeah. We do Coachella in the US and most of the main events over there now, so we're starting to do a lot in Australia. So yeah, basically your imagination isn't limited to the types of businesses that start using Square. So it starts at those small ones, and then it grows from that. It complements a lot of businesses. So
are these people that are kind of signing on, are they just not accepting card at all, and then suddenly they can, or are they using, are there other solutions that they're using that's not serving them?
It's certainly a mix, but a recent survey we did, we found 80% of our businesses weren't using traditional card acceptance terminals. So a lot of businesses which are new to card acceptance, they either thought they were too small, or they were too new business that they couldn't get it, or they were knocked back by the incumbents, treated it as, or deemed to be too risky, or their businesses that the solutions didn't meet their requirements. And so you're saying events and what have you. So to be locked into a 3-year contract with monthly
With a machine,
fees,
yeah.
it does make sense if you're around for a week or even a weekend. So yeah, a lot of different use cases.
Cool. Well, let's talk a little bit about the design of the product, because it is kind of catchy. It's this little
Sure.
white square. Where did that come from, and how has that evolved? Because it used to be a little thicker, right?
It did. Well, it's funny the size changes we've gone through, but yeah, definitely the first prototype was, I'm sure the team wouldn't mind me saying it wasn't the perfect prototype, but we have incredible hardware engineers, like incredible.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the best thing to think about it is you think about a card acceptance terminal that sits on a countertop. It's a big, clunky, often unattractive looking thing. And then we've been able to truncate it down to this tiny little device. So from an engineering perspective, it's phenomenal what they've managed to do. But our, I guess, undying focus and myopic focus on going above and beyond and getting that design right is incredible. And one of the things that attracted me to Square. So yeah, it's particularly when you look at bricks and mortar businesses and you look at they spend millions of dollars on fit out, then they put this clunky, ugly device on their countertop. So anyone that sees our designs, they're incredibly sleek and slim, but also it's from a functionality and practicality perspective, we also keep a focus on. So, if you need to throw it in your pocket and go to a job or be on the road or anything like that, that mobility is really important too. But yeah, definitely the other part is for small businesses. So they've done such a hard job to start their business, and they want to be seen in a particular way. So to be able to pull out this little unit, which is incredibly beautifully designed, there's a lot of pride in that, and we see that across our sellers, that they're excited by being able to show sort of cutting edge technology and that they're part of that and they're not being left behind. So it's a big part of our business.
Cool. It really shows that you kind of care about who you're actually catering to. What about the innovation in this space? Is it accelerating? Like, we've seen a lot of FinTech come up in the last couple of years. What's happening? Is it blocked? Are we moving forward?
I think different areas are going at different speeds. There's no doubt about that. I think it's definitely ramping up. I think with any sort of sector that gets going, like FinTech, it takes a while sort of spinning new wheels and different companies trying to get going and failing a little bit and then sort of gaining traction, whether it be from funding or promotion or just breaking through to that mainstream, or the sector. So, there's no doubt with FinTech, I think it's still certainly early stages, but I think we're going to see a lot more of it coming through.
So you're obviously streamlining the process. What's next as you move forward? Is it something smaller? Is it NFC? What's next?
Well, very excited to say 4 weeks ago we launched our new product, which is the contactless reader device. So that's our chip and contactless reader that accepts Apple Pay, Android Pay, Samsung Pay, as well as chip cards. So that's $59, which is still very, very accessible, but allows small businesses to kind of future-proof themselves. From our perspective, it's building out that market. And we openly say, as a relatively small team, that we've taken a bit of a shotgun approach. So we're very scientific and very structured the way we do it in the US. But when we're starting a business in Australia, for us, you can't just transplant that across and be that analytical. You have to test your theories, test the types of things you're going to do, see what traction you get in the Australian market. And the first 6 months has been that. It's been learning. It's been sort of trying different ways of growing. I think now, with a lot of data coming through, we're starting to get a little bit more focused. So internally, we're about refining our systems and starting to get a little bit more data-driven in our decision-making. But externally, it's about absolute growth. And yeah, we're incredibly humbled by our numbers at the moment, so we've got to make sure we keep maintaining that.
So what are some of the things that you've tested? What's worked? What hasn't?
Yeah, I think probably the main thing is the sectors we've gone after or tried to appeal to. So we went very, very broad with our marketing to start, and we tried to keep it quite generic as much as we could. But we're now seeing real traction in certain sectors. So we're starting to refine that a lot more and make sure that our marketing and our campaigns are very much targeted to those sectors. So we're getting to see higher growth strategy, but we're also then reaching out to them to learn from them as well. So a little bit more refining the way we do business there. But yeah, also questioning the decisions we made on price points and the way we've gone about it. So all those original hypotheses that we went into market with, we're all looking back to see we've done the right thing and how we go forward, and then listening to the seller ultimately to say what product do you want next and how do we keep growing our base.
And what are some of the things that you've learned so far?
At the risk of sounding arrogant, we've been really, really excited to see, because the US story is such an exciting one. And, you know, there's, depending on what metric you look at, between 3 and 5 million businesses that actively use Square. And that's an incredible number. So it's really easy to say everything is going to work in Australia, what we did then. So when we launched, we made our assumptions, we got going, and just to see that traction start. Because everyone in FinTech or technology, you know, obviously knows Jack, knows Twitter, and then knows Square, and the story is quite well known in that space. But when you talk to our heartland is the small businesses, they don't know who we are, and they had no reason to know who we are. So we started from scratch and went to build that brand up. So one of the most exciting things is just seeing that growth and seeing those going through those stages of a business that's growing anyway. You know, all the way through to the numbers starting to look, you know, incredibly good. But all that, when you start as a team, start seeing those anecdotal stories that are really exciting. Like you know, the other day, a plumber was at my house fixing the sink, and he called up and said, you know, can you pay me now? Do you want to send me your bank details? And I kind of thought, I'll give it a shot. I said, any chance you have Square and you can send me an electronic invoice? There was a pause, and I was like, what am I doing? I'm going to switch off now and again. And he goes, yeah, Square, I've got that. And he goes, absolutely, I love that. And I just said, like, transparency, I work for Square. And he then set off on this expletive-ridden thing about how much he loves Square and how much it's changed his business. So learning those things and just going, wow, this really resonates with Australian small businesses as well as international ones. They're incredible. So just to see that the products that we love and have refined over so many years are gaining traction here and really making a difference to small businesses, you know, very humbling.
What about some of the partnerships that you've made here? So I understand you partnered with Harvey Norman. What was the thinking there, and is that something you're going to continue doing?
Absolutely, absolutely. So the number one thing for us is we understand when you're starting or growing a small business, you are flat out, and it's really, really hard to start a small business and to grow it. So, you know, you're focused on your product or your service. You're not focused on the end result, which is the card payments or the inventory management or the payroll or whatever product that you're looking for. So we need to be where they are. And so being able to have such fantastic partnerships with Harvey Norman, Officeworks, Apple, Optus, Bunnings, these sort of businesses, we have to make sure we are where those businesses are. That's one part of it. And all of us around the room would be used to going online, finding what we want. But not everyone is like that, and small businesses are very diverse. So that's important. And also, these sort of brands have incredible footprints across the country. A big part of our story in many countries is that regional footprint as well. Yeah. They're often underserved. And these brands just have footprints everywhere that we need to be. So that's exciting. And I think what we're trying to do for small business resonates with them as well. So it's a great partnership.
So when you're working with some of these big partners, would you have any advice for how to execute on that properly?
The retail partners?
Like partnering with bigger companies like that who can help you spread your product.
Yeah, it can be challenging if you're talking more generally than retail. The number one thing is you have to have a core aligned interest. And in our case, it is, again, that myopic view to help small businesses and, you know, change things and really put them first. And now and again, you come across businesses that are that focused and saying, you know, we want to help out these small businesses. We want to get out there, offer them better products and better services. And if you've got that in common, that's key. And it's kind of like any partnership. You also need your very strong internal advocates. And so if you can have a massive business you're trying to do a partnership with, if you've got one or two people in there who are really backing the partnership, it can really go well. If it's a little bit lost amongst departments, it can be difficult to get going. So you look out for those basic alignments and those internal champions, and then it can go really well. But there's no doubt, you know, we're a very, very fast-moving small business in Australia, and we're still relatively small compared to some of these. And there is different, you know, expectations from speed that we have to deal with, but they've all been pretty good.
Cool, that's really good to hear. So you talked a little bit about how you're seeing some traction in certain areas, and that you're actually reaching out to them. How are you connecting with those customers? What are you learning from them? Tell me about that process.
Yeah, I mean, we are fundamentally a tech company. That's our sort of our origin. So we do, you know, everything online from search all the way through to SEO, SEM very, very well, and we're very clear in the way we do it. So that's definitely working well. But again, back to the earlier point, our sellers are so diverse, you can't expect them to always be searching online. So we got to make sure we are everywhere to get to them. So as I said, it's a little bit shotgun approach, and we go broad, and then we sort of narrow it in over the recent months, and we're just getting a lot more targeted in the way we do it. But yeah, we're starting to see the results from doing it.
Are there any sectors or areas where you haven't seen traction, where you expected to see traction?
Not so much. I think some of the ones that are strong in the US have come through, pretty strong here with a few additional ones. But no, not ones that haven't. I think probably the one we expect to be on the upside, and has been, is in the trade sector. I mean, Australia has a massive trade community, so we're seeing some really good numbers come through that. We've also been a little bit more surprised on hospitality. So we started with the chip reader, which is more about mobility and low price point. It's not so much, or traditionally it's not about those fast-moving cafes and multi-million-dollar businesses like that.
Yeah.
But we're starting to see traction there because they find the use case for it. There's something about it they like. They like the point-of-sale app that comes with it, or they like queue busting, things like that. So we're seeing probably ahead of our expectations in that sector. But as we kind of introduce new products like the contactless reader, we're again seeing further traction there.
What about like boutique stores? Is that something that you've seen a lot of traction in? Because isn't that a fairly big one in the US as well?
Yeah, it is. When you say stores, if you're talking about bricks and mortar, again, the first product wasn't ultimately designed for that, but we saw some initial good growth there. In the US, we have other products like Stand, which is more about your countertop. So Square Stand can be used in that. We don't have that in Australia. But again, with the new contactless reader, we're seeing some great traction there. But yeah, definitely boutique in terms of unique operators that have started up a really different business. They love what Square stands for and the power that they can get from the system, so they gravitate towards it.
Are there any other FinTech or payment technologies that you're seeing being adopted really well as well?
Yeah, I don't like singling out too many of them, but I think they're probably the headline ones, which, companies like Intuit or Xero, we tend to do partnerships with, and they're obviously massive success stories, and really, Intuit's huge, obviously, but some of the smaller ones, we've also got a incredibly open and pragmatic approach to doing partnerships. It's very easy to fall into that trap of fearing everyone for potential competition, and from our perspective, we've got so many different verticals, and we cover so many areas from card payments to invoices. We'll throw point of sale and on and on. Mm-hmm. We kind of don't have the time to be too cautious and paranoid about competition. So we're very much, if a small business wants to use our product or a component of it, but wants to use another FinTech product to complement them, we're open to that too. So pretty open-minded.
Good. That's probably a good attitude to take.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you're starting to get some of that data back after 7 months. Can you tell me a little bit about some of the data points that you've observed since launching?
This is where we get a little bit tricky in terms of data points, being a public company and what have you.
Fair enough. Tell me what you can. I mean, anything that we can learn from, right? Like any insight into launching a new product, like getting that feedback on what's happening in the industry.
Yeah, I think probably the key one, and we came into it with a very clear, strategic, data-driven approach to it, and we kind of looked at all the tools we have in the US, but to a degree we threw them out, and we, a very small team when we started, a handful of people, and we kind of quickly realised, our place in the market and then the lack of knowledge of our brand. And one thing I was really proud of, and the key part of it, is making sure you hire correctly. So the team that I got on early on, who have just been absolutely incredible, complete superstars, we all had the same approach where we have to get out there and we have to talk to businesses and we have to make sure we're very present, we learn, and we're not sitting in silos or just staring at SEM, SEO results to think that's all we've got to do. So one of the things we did early on was absolutely get out and start talking to small businesses. We'd walk on the street and see a small business about to open, and we'd go in there and talk to them. We'd be at a cafe or a bar at night time on the weekend, and something that I love seeing with the team, you see them ping each other and sort of say, I went to this bar and they don't have a card acceptance terminal. I had a chat to them, and can you come and do a demo on Monday? So that kind of get your hands dirty thing was absolutely critical. And I think any businesses, we're obviously very lucky we're a big-ish US company coming here, but if we'd fallen into the trap thinking everything's laid out for us, we would have failed. So the first thing we did was absolutely get out there and start talking to the people that would use our products, and that helped us significantly. We also, probably, again, if my job was this easy, I'd be very happy, but the way I look at it, very macro, is two elements. One's an internal one and one's an external one. And the external one is all about advocacy. And it's something that Square in the US has done incredibly well. And I see this every time when I go over there and I kind of deceitfully get in a taxi and I ask the taxi driver, what's that white thing you've got there? And and they all, 9 times out of 10, they'll swivel around in their chair and start just selling it to me with these big eyes. And the first time I did it, I was like, why are they doing that? Like, you know, if I was in Australia and I asked someone, what's that terminal you've got there, they either wouldn't answer the question or they'd say it's a card terminal. And so I kind of realised that Square had done something to get that level of advocacy. So a big thing we did early on was think about what are the components that made that up? Like how did we get that taxi driver to turn around, or that market stall owner to start advocating it and then start, you know, blogging about it or putting it on their social media? Because until you get that virality and that advocacy, you're just chasing every sale and you're throwing money at search. So that was a key thing we had to do. And I think we've done paid a lot of attention to getting the advocacy right and every different component that goes into that. And the second one is a little bit more cliche, but the internal is about culture.
Yeah.
Unlike you guys, which is a very cool environment here, but we don't have so many, we don't have foosball tables or bean bags or what have you. Although we do have a table tennis table now. I think that our culture is very, I don't say it's probably different, but it's very defined. And the people that work for Square are there for different reasons. They're often there for working for a high growth company and working into tech and, you know, or working for a vision that Jack had, you know, 7 years ago. But it's a very strong sort of ethically driven thing where every product or service we put out there, there's just never any catches. There's never any bad things in there, and we're very focused on that. So the people that we hire have that little sort of grain in what they want to do in there. They're saying, I want to work for a company that I truly believe in, not just a brand or one product. You know, everything I do I want to be proud of. So yeah, getting that culture right is critical. And unfortunately, you can't transplant culture, so you've got to build it. And that's another thing we're really focused on. Very, very early stage. We're seeing changes already, but yeah, getting those two things right is really critical.
How did you find those people and, I mean, convince them to join a tiny team here, especially because I'm sure not all of them would have known about Square and, you know, foster that culture here?
Absolutely. And surprisingly, it was kind of difficult at the start. When I joined it, because I was the first person in Australia, and I was just jumping up and down with excitement. I thought, I'm going to walk up to anyone, and they're going to go, yes, I want to join Square. But yeah, I think our tech scene is different to the US. It's still a few years behind, and as I was touched on before, people, you know, without getting too philosophical, people, you know, we're all very well educated, and we're all taught to, you know, go really well at school, best we can, quickly go into university. Once you're done university, get the best score you can, get out and work for the best brand, go for the blue chips, and keep going that way. And then a lot of people get to a point in their careers and go, I don't actually like what I'm doing. In the US, that's different. So people come out of university and go, I'm going to go work for a high growth tech company. Yeah, I found in Australia that a lot of people said, yeah, I really want to work for a startup. A lot of people knew Square, so it was an easy conversation there. But when you start talking to them, you quickly realise that without telling them, they're probably not suited to it because, you know, it's very, I don't know if glamorous is the right word, but it's very like working for a high growth tech company from San Francisco. It has its headline story. But it's incredibly, it's a different environment. Like you have to get your hands dirty. You can't be precious. Don't talk to me about job titles. Don't talk about, you know, can I have direct reports in this day? And all that sort of thing. It's like, we're all on the same level. We're all in this together, and we've got to try incredibly hard. And only on that way are we going to succeed. So, yeah, it was difficult. I think I interviewed so many people, and so many people who I would have hired in former roles as an employer, but just didn't quite have that right balance. So, I think the early ones that we hired were incredibly strong, and they had that drive. And from my perspective, I care, but I don't care what their drive is, like in terms of if it's getting Square on the CV, if it's getting equity, if it's, you know, disrupting, if it's working for tech, whatever it is, but they need to be self-motivated. And I think through luck or perception or whatever, I managed to find a team that had that, and they gelled really well. So, yeah.
How long did it take you to build the team?
We certainly haven't stopped. I think
How many are you now?
I think we're 17 now, approaching 20, I think.
Wow.
With
What's the goal?
There's
just
no
limit?
cap. There's absolutely no cap. We are very, very early stage, you know, in terms of our product set, in terms of our growth rate. So, like, 6 months into payments. And
Yeah.
so if you look at the US, there's a long list of incredible products that are already launched there that we don't have. And there's constantly this list of products that are coming through, which no one in the world's seen yet, that we get incredibly excited about. So no, there's absolutely no cap on the number of people that we'll eventually hire. I think this time last year we were at 5 or 6 or something. So growing very quickly, but still being very careful to hire the right people.
Yeah. And how many countries is Square in at the moment?
Australia was the 4th.
The 4th.
So the US, Canada, Japan, and Australia.
And any other countries on the horizon?
Yeah, I think it's been made relatively common knowledge that we're in the UK and just sort of having a look around there. So yeah, but we don't have concrete plans for other countries, but we're certainly obviously looking at how we grow. And a country like Australia was really, really important for us to getting a lot of things right, and I think it's a good precursor market for different countries as well.
What about the competitive landscape? Because you guys were the first to come in with the little card reader. Stripe has one, is that right?
No card reader, no.
Okay.
They're more sort of e-commerce. I guess we get lumped into this MPOS device category, a mobile point of sale. And I didn't think anything in Australia was anything like what Square was in terms of its really low price point, easy onboarding, tiny form factor. So there wasn't anything, I don't think, out there like that. There was a couple of others trying to get going, but that whole breadth of what you also get with it, there certainly weren't any other competitors that we saw as directly comparable.
And are you concerned at all about other competitors from the US coming in here? You guys kind of proved that the market's there.
Yeah, no, we don't. I mean, it's a cliche, but we certainly don't worry about competition in that way. We've just got so much to do and so much to focus on just building our own business. I generally find it's a waste of your time to worry about competitors in that sense. I guess at a different phase, when you're trying to protect market space or market share, then maybe that's a more valid way of approaching your business. But the growth is looking so promising at the moment. We're just focused on getting that right, and we've still got a long way to go before we worry about competitors. And let's not forget, we're still very, very small and very, very young in a financial services SaaS market, cloud market that is pretty mature and some very heavy-hitting incumbents in there. So we're certainly not looking over our shoulder just yet. So.
Awesome. Could you maybe draw some comparisons between the financial industry and the landscape here versus the US? And maybe are there some lessons that we can learn then? Obviously, Australia is a little bit behind the US. So what can we learn?
I don't know if we can learn it or it's just going to happen over time, but I certainly think seeing FinTech companies break through to the mainstream is something we haven't seen in Australia. There's little sort of hero examples of it happening, but not really mainstream. So there's obviously a lot of FinTech companies getting started, but the really exciting thing is when you as a consumer, and you sit down to whatever FinTech product it is or vertical, whether it's a personal loan or whether it's banking services or payments, that it's going to be an amazing process or a development to see a consumer or business sit down and compare very established incumbents equally with a brand new startup. And I think in the US, that happens, and particularly pockets of US, obviously more than others. But I mean, they've got these companies you can launch, and within a few months, your growth is viral, and you're being compared against these big companies, and we're certainly not there. That said, on the flip side, in payments, for example, we're a pretty advanced market in payments and very innovative. Things like contactless here is the biggest market in the world for contactless payments, which is pretty cool. If you look at the US, they haven't even got contactless cards. They've got a small amount, and they're obviously looking to jump to mobile payments as well. And that said, we're a little bit behind in that as well. So, generally as an industry, we're a long way behind, but specifically in payments, we're probably a long way in front as well.
Awesome. And what about maybe some advice you might have for anyone who is in the FinTech industry, looking to tackle some of those incumbents?
Change industries quickly. No. I mean, the complete flip side of that, I think whoever they've chosen the right industry, and there's so much more growth. I mean, there's a reason why the biggest tech companies in the world are all focused on FinTech. It is not only from a sort of a lucrative financial perspective, but it's such a present thing in people's lives. So, and such a critical thing that open up a whole range of opportunities and different products and services. So, if you're getting started, it's obviously, I think all the traditional things apply where FinTech in general is pretty much dominated by big players in Australia and has been for a very long time. So be prepared for every single obstacle being thrown at you. But again, I think there's a movement. There's a lot of different FinTech workspaces and investment coming out at the moment. It's growing exponentially at the moment. So I think some of the support systems you need to have a red hot go at it is starting to be there. But yeah, just be prepared for a bit much of a rocky ride. But yeah, it's a super exciting one. I think the Australian FinTech landscape we're going to see in 10 years compared to now will be remarkably different. Remarkably different.
Well, I hope so. So we will open it up to questions now. And somebody will have a catch box for you at some point. Yep, there we go. Pyramid will throw that to you. It's just a box that has a microphone in it, so hold it about here. There, oh, there you go.
Yeah, that was the difficult part about it. I could have sold it to my partner, and there was certainly value in it. But I felt so bad about leaving it. And when you're in those early stages, you are so much of the brand, and you are so much of the effort that's gone into it. So I knew that I was going to hurt the business by leaving significantly. So I handed it all over, and I maintained a small percentage of it. And it's since gone on to be morphed into the other part of the business as well. But that was hard. That was like literally from that first moment of opening the computer on the table all the way through to saying, I'm out. It felt wrong, very, very wrong. But again, I knew I was doing it for the right reasons, but it was a difficult decision. Sorry? What do you mean? What I did? Oh, was that the question? Sorry. It was Kinetik Innovation, so it was all about building quick prototypes for blue chip businesses around mobile payments and loyalty, and also shopping side of things. So I worked with the likes of Coles and the networks as well. So
Over here.
Just a question on, as a startup coming into Australia, you've got all these massive incumbents that are there, heavy hitters, as you say. What about the regulatory side of things in terms of support from the government and, you're trying to break into this industry? How have you found the banking and finance regulatory environment supporting you as a startup coming in?
that's been really easy. Yeah, it's been smooth sailing. It's definitely a mixed bag. On one side, Victorian government's been incredible, helping us get set up and giving us every advantage to succeed. That's been great. We generally, from different parties, whether it be the Reserve Bank or things like that, they love what we stand for, and the economic empowerment, helping small businesses get an advantage to grow and just growing that side of the business community. So we've been really warmly embraced, and I think we certainly don't take it for granted. There are a lot of doors open for us, and they do help us. That said, other parts of the FinTech space or the financial service industry, it's certainly been built around big players, and I don't think there's anything evil in it per se, but they've certainly built it. It's been built by these parties for these parties to protect these parties in terms of make sure the ecosystem stays safe. So just generally coming in from the outside is an unnatural thing, and there's no system or flow to go through to get there. So yeah, it's been a two-way process and a lot of open conversations, because most of the entities recognise the need to foster more competition and more innovation and allow small businesses to come through, but the systems and processes just aren't there. So we're certainly not here to be martyrs and pave the way for everyone, but that's part of the thing we think we're proud of, and we think that if we can knock down a few walls or change a few systems or ask some questions about those processes and regulations in place, where we're doing a favour for the industry. Because if I look at it, we're a very well-funded business with a great track record, but if you're coming fresh to this, you simply could not have done what we've done, and that's wrong. So hopefully that's changing a little bit, but yeah, it's not without its challenges.
Just curious, there's a lot of, competition for talent right now across Australia, and you all mentioned your aggressive growing plans. So What kind of specific steps or factors do you consider key to your success in winning the war for young Australian talent that would help you all grow?
There's probably two parts to it. There's the immediate need of getting the talent that we need, and it's a little bit of a needle in a haystack process at the moment. And the way I've personally approached it in the Australian market is I think I've got one person in the team from the payments industry, and the rest come from everywhere in different and eclectic backgrounds. So more than anything in those early days, as I touched on before, you're looking for that spark and that drive, and they're there for the right reasons, and you have to motivate them, and they're really hungry for whatever reason to be part of something and be part of the story growing. So there's that immediate need, but there's also the other things I touched on that at some point we need to start giving back a lot more to the general industry, the general tech scene, because that path through from the education system through to going straight into tech is not there. So I hope the Australian tech scene particularly starts shining lights on the success stories and to say this is a credible path. So yeah, we'll certainly try to do a lot more in that aspect. But it's hard. It's hard. There's a very small talent pool at this point. But yeah, just looking for people outside is probably the key at the moment, bringing more people into it.
Yeah, hi, just a really quick question on NPP. Do you see, because it's coming along quite soon now, do you see that as a help or a hindrance or irrelevant to your business?
Definitely not irrelevant. They've certainly hired a good CEO in Adrian Lovely. I think he's a fantastic acquisition and the right type of person who's very experienced in the Australian market, but also a passion to deliver. That said, the challenge he's got is big. There's obviously a track record of similar industry type initiatives that haven't got to that endpoint. I think something like that, it will. The principle of it is fantastic. There's no doubt about it. But there's still a lot of questions to be answered in terms of, I guess, when it gets delivered, what's the outcome, what's the pricing, what's the openness for other parties, or are we building new rails for existing parties? I think the intent is right. So from our perspective, we encourage it, anything like that. We're certainly not changing our strategy in any way. We partner with Cuscal, who's a big part of that as well. So we think we've got a pretty good party looking out for our interests there. But if it delivers on everything that it's aiming to do, I think it's something we'd be really interested in having a look at.
Hi. Sorry, I'm just interested in the amount of effort as a small company that you put into PCI compliance. Do you have to put a lot of effort into it, or you just merely pass through?
No, massive amount of effort. The team that we have, particularly in the US, is a culmination of some of the best industry experts, and part of that is being part of the PCI process. So absolutely a lot of effort, and every market we go into obviously has different forms of regulation and different device certification. So yeah, a big part of our business is that. But again, payments is one part of the business. But no, absolutely every local or global regulatory body that we need to adhere to, we're also a big willing participant in that. That said, we do things different, and that's sort of the only way you can sort of get prices really low or get form factors amazing. Sometimes you have to challenge the status quo. So a big part of our process is obviously making sure we stay connected and talk to bodies like PCI and work really collaboratively to make sure we bring an industry, open an industry up to new ways of doing things. So yeah, we work very closely with them.
Over here.
Hi.
Hey.
We talk a bit about innovation for businesses in payments. I'm interested in innovation from a customer perspective. How much simpler can it get than tapping a card or a phone on a device?
A lot of people, I think the immediate sort of horizon of how simple it can get is pretty well documented in terms of walking into a retail or a hospitality, any payment environment, and just being able to walk straight out with the product or whatever. So there's absolutely zero sort of overlay interaction that you need whatsoever. That said, one thing I've learnt from payment innovation is that people don't, particularly consumers, don't get out of bed and say that EMV transaction or contactless transaction wasn't streamlined enough. I'm really frustrated by that. So
I do.
you do?
Oh, it bothers me so much.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, I'm wrong.
I
then.
hate the
Okay.
bill at the restaurant.
Okay, we'll fix that problem. There we go. Yeah, so I think if you're going to shift things, you can't leap too far because there is two sides to it. There's obviously the merchant side of the business side and there's the consumer side. And if you start doing too many changes, one part of that equation will get lost. So I think the gradual steps will get there. You look at Australia, has actually done it really, really well, where we've obviously come from Mack, which is a redundant technology, through to EMV chip, through to contactless cards, and now we're seeing mobile payments coming through. And there's no doubt deviceless transactions is the obvious next step from that. But I think if you do it sequentially, you'll get there.
So what's deviceless transactions mean? Does that mean like tapping a finger or like biometric? Like what's...
Yeah, biometrics is always heralded as probably the next one. But I think if it's in the phone location based, I mean, the mobile phone is the most powerful device we have, and there's a lot of information and data that can uniquely identify you as an individual, and also the proximity ability that you have with that device is becoming more accurate. So there's many ways you can do that today, that knowing you're in that as long as you've got a mobile phone on you, you can run a transaction without interacting at all, if much. But again, you've got to make sure those little things, the refined details are right, that they've accepted the transaction or what have you. But I think technology's there to do it. Yeah, we played around with it probably about 3 years ago in the US, and we got it to an amazing experience where as you walk towards your cafe, it would pick up you going towards the cafe and sort of say, you go in there, yep, what do you want? And you could order it straight away, and it could watch you as you came closer to the location, and then at that right time, ping the barista to start making your coffee exactly what it is. We got it down to the point where you could identify almost your position in the line, so that close proximity. So yeah, I think the technology's there. Biometrics is you can argue philosophically about that for a long time, about whether it's an invasive technology or not. I'm one of the people that make my experience better, I don't care. But a lot of people, that could be a little bit intrusive, so maybe it'll take time. That said, a lot of businesses, particularly in Europe and in the US, are looking at those sorts of things, and the networks are certainly looking at it as well. So,
I think there's one on this side.
Hi, Ben.
Hey.
We have been using the Square service since its first launch in Australia.
thank you.
Yes, and we are quite happy with it. But I only have one concern, because our business has both online part and offline part. And for offline, it's only a small portion, maybe 20%. But for online, we can't use Square, so we have to choose another payment gateway solution like Stripe, this kind of services. So in future, do you have any plans to launch online service like Stripe?
Firstly, thank you very much for using Square. We appreciate that. We certainly love meeting our sellers as well. What sort of business is yours?
We are working in ticketing, events ticketing, and travel industry.
Fantastic. So I guess probably the easiest way to look at this, recently in the US, we did launch that. So we've launched e-commerce and API connectivity for e-commerce. So we work with a lot of the website builders like Wix, BigCommerce, those sort of companies. So it's certainly something we're having a good look at the moment. Probably the key thing for us at the moment is making sure we don't go too shotgun with our products. So 6 months in the market is a very short time, and we're still building that brand up. If we know we throw too many products, businesses get confused about what we are and what we stand for, and what's this Square business. So we're probably going a little bit slower in that aspect, but yeah, it's already a part of our business in the US, and amongst other things, we're having a good look at the moment. So we'll certainly take your card and let you know if that changes. So.
Looking forward. Thank you.
No, thank you.
All right, we will leave it at that for now. I'm sure maybe you can stick around if anyone else does want to have a quick chat. So let's give Ben a big round of applause.
Thank you.
Awesome, and feel free to stick around, grab another beer. There might be a little bit of food left, and yeah, hopefully we'll see you all at StartCon.